Hello, and welcome to this episode of Security Square, our cybersecurity focused series featuring analyst insights, expert guests, and the latest news and happenings across the security sector. I'm your host, Shelly Kramer, principal analyst here at Kramer&Co Research. And I'm joined today by Tom Parker, who's the CTO of NetSPI, for a conversation about the complexities of the attack surface in organizations today and how a proactive security strategy can be a game changer. Tom, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me, Shelly. Great to be here.
I've been looking forward to this conversation. So one of the things I always try and start out with is your backstory. Share with me a little bit about your career journey and how you ended up here.
Yeah, so I've been in this industry for about 25 years now. This was, I think, my 23rd visit to Black Hat in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, I've seen the industry change quite a bit over those years, from a relatively small gathering of enthusiasts to growing to the type of scale that we see our industry at today. I got my start as a researcher back in the day, looking for software flaws and turn that into a career in security assessments. And that led me down the path of running businesses, running security practices. Before starting Hubble, I was the line of business chief information security officer over AIG Insurance. And Hubble is actually my second company. The first company I co-founded in 2010 with Matt DeVoe, and that was a red teaming business that we sold to Accenture in 2015, where I became their chief technology officer.
Awesome. And, so you mentioned Hubble, but I know that I want to tell our audience that you founded Hubble Technology, and Hubble is a cyber asset attack surface management technology company that was acquired by NetSPI this past June, right?
That's right. Yeah. We're just on about the 2-month mark at this point. We were founded. I founded the company in 2020. So I like to say we're a pandemic baby, right? Everyone was on lockdown, and what are we going to do? And I decided, well, I'm going to go start another business. That we have this huge problem in the industry in terms of visibility and having situational awareness of what's in your operating environment.
Right.
And with the backing of CrowdStrike's Falcon Fund, I think we were one of the first investments out of CrowdStrike's fund, and Excel, one of the biggest names in cybersecurity investment. We launched the business.
That's
and it
awesome.
sounds like you have a friend on your end that wants to join the conversation too.
I do have a friend on my end who wants to join the conversation. He feels like he's not getting the attention he deserves. Bless his heart. So what I wanted to focus on in our conversation today, Tom, is really kind of a dive into what's happening in the industry, what we're seeing from customers as it relates to their challenges and pain points. And, from my standpoint, one thing we know for certain, a lack of visibility is a significant challenge, as is the understanding that the attack surface that we're dealing with today, both internal and external, is the root of many of these issues. And that attack surface is actually growing at a rapid pace. And to me, that's where a proactive security approach addresses gaps in visibility and enables organizations to ensure business resilience, which is kind of sort of important. And it also helps keep up with, innovation, which is happening at a crazy rapid pace, and that's not going to slow down any. So what I wanted to ask you, Tom, is that, this is without question a challenging time for businesses from a security standpoint. The attack surfaces are expanding. Teams are challenged by a number of things, including sometimes a dearth of highly skilled talent. Threat actors are getting more sophisticated by the day, in many ways enabled by AI, and the data breaches, they keep coming. So I highlighted some of the concerns that I see from customers in the market, as well as from what we see in our research. What are you seeing and hearing from customers about the security challenges they face and how they're addressing those?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've really hit on the major points. I think in many cases, security has today and has always been a challenge of scale and prioritization.
Right.
I have too many assets in my environment that's continually expanding. It's becoming more complex through innovation. Innovation gives us a lot of opportunity to defend our environments a lot more effectively. At the same time, it also creates challenges for us as we invest more heavily in things like serverless compute, cloud, container-based applications, and a lot of those technologies allow IT departments to expand their footprint, their technology footprint more rapidly. And that's a challenge for the CISO, right? They were already struggling with a visibility problem. This has just further compounded that visibility problem. And when I started Hubble, I really wanted to create, after you exit your first company, people ask, are you going to do another company? I think there's a lot of variables in answering that question. But one of the really important things is you don't just start a business for the sakes of it. I'm sure some people do, but so I spent a good amount of time really thinking about this problem set and how I wanted to solve it. And I really, we created a solution, a Hubble, that was the product that at AIG I wish I had, and that I wish my clients had when I was at Accenture Security. And there really just was a big gap in the market for a solution that really was end to end. We talk a lot at the moment about platformification of security.
Right.
That was, I think, one of the hot topics at Black Hat this year, especially off the back of the CrowdStrike outage. Like, do we trust security platforms? Is it a good idea or not?
Yeah.
And the reason we're having a lot of those conversations is because the security product industry as a whole is very fragmented. There's a lot of different point solutions, a lot of different kind of bits and pieces that the CISO has to stitch together in order to effectively create an end solution that can really solve some problems for them. And the visibility space back in 2020 was no exception. There were products that would just give me visibility of my on-prem systems. There were tools I could use to help discover my external attack surface. There were tools out there I could help to discover my cloud attack surface. There were different tools I would need to discover my application attack surface.
Yeah.
And nothing really that brought all of these different disciplines together.
Yeah.
And so, the fundamental thesis really around Hubble was creating, being the cartographer for space, basically. Instead of space, right? The Hubble telescope is obviously mapping space, mapping your network and helping you understand what the different paths are and the relationships are, and just like space, right? Your network continues to expand every day, and you need something that's really going to keep up with that sort of expansion.
Yeah, absolutely. We did some research in advance of RSA this year. And it's funny because we went in, we did this research study, just a quick pulse survey with our research partner, Enterprise Technology Research. And we went into the research study expecting a trend toward platformization. And what came out of that research was really interesting because I can't remember if it was 150 or 300 respondents. It wasn't an insignificant number, but the respondents to that survey, who are practitioners, indicated that they weren't moving to platformization and embracing that at the rate we expected them to. So we had a lot of conversations around that at RSA. And of course, the platform companies were preaching the platform gospel, and this is the only way to go, and blah, blah, blah. But what we were hearing from practitioners was that, we understand that value proposition, but we're not there today. And what we're looking for is best in class solutions for this and for this and for this. And much to your point, sometimes having all those capabilities and using a platform that has good enough visibility capabilities or whatever, like good enough isn't good enough. And so these practitioners said that their stack remained, they were continuing to add to their stack. They did not see approaching consolidation in the next 12 to 18 months. And they were very happy with that. So it was really interesting to hear that and to see that. But I do see the benefit in a solution, of course, that can be best in class and connect all these dots together. But I always like it when, you go into something with some sort of hypotheses and then, the industry tells you differently. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I'll find that research and share it with you. You might.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting. Listen, I mean, I think a lot of the conversations that are going on about security platform consolidation are the same conversations we had 15 years ago about cloud.
Absolutely.
And, so Microsoft's a great example of this, right? Where if you remember way back when, Microsoft was getting a lot of flack because of having monopoly on web browsers, right? That packaging it with the operating system. And at that time, if you asked probably the same people, or at least the CIOs within those organizations, would you buy your operating systems, your servers, your cloud, all from Microsoft? They'd probably say, no, definitely not. I don't see. I would never consolidate around that. Of course, look at where we are today.
Absolutely.
And so I think the question is not necessarily whether it happens. I think it's just a question of timing and how long it takes for people to come around to understanding those benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So before this conversation, I was looking at, funny the things that happenstance throws across your field of vision, but I was thinking about this conversation and I happened to be looking at Cohesity's Global Cyber Resilience Report 2024 just came out. They surveyed both public and private organizations across multiple countries, and the biggest revelation from the survey was the overestimation of cyber resilience capabilities among organizations. So I thought, oh, Tom's going to like this. I think we experienced this about a month ago or so while organizations were navigating that tiny little global outage that shook the world. And what I love about it is that I've long been, beating the cyber resilience drum, but I think that incident really brought the topic of cyber resilience and business continuity even more to the fore than ever before. There were some interesting findings here, though, that I thought I would share. So the report showed that 2% of survey respondents indicated they could recover their data and restore business processes within 24 hours of a cyber attack. This, however, contrasted with 78% of respondents who said they were confident in their cyber resilience strategy. So you have this huge group of people who are confident in their strategy, but a number of them saying they could not even recover business processes within 24 hours of a cyber attack. And that 2% is a small number. There's some bigger numbers here in a second I'll address. Another data point that I thought was really interesting is that organizations seem oddly willing to pay ransoms. And 75% of the respondents in that report indicated their organization would pay over $1 million to recover data and restore business ops. 22% were willing to pay over $3 million. And in the last year, 69% of respondents admitted to paying ransom, despite 77% of those organizations having policies against making ransomware payments. So all of that I thought was really interesting. Recovery times reported by survey respondents revealed there were significant vulnerabilities. And I mentioned just a minute ago that 2% of the survey respondents said that they could recover in 24 hours. 18% said they'd need 1 to 3 days. 34% said they'd need 4 to 6 days. 31% said they'd need 1 to 2 weeks. And 16% of survey respondents said they would need 3+ weeks to recover. So all that happens in my head when I hear that is dollar signs. I mean, could you imagine your business not being able to conduct business for even, 4 to 6 days? I mean, so 34, this is greater than 50% of the survey respondents said they would need more than 4 to 6 days to recover business operations. And that, to me, that's crazy.
I think the reality is most of the respondents probably don't really know the answer to those questions. I think, I will say that just from experience, things like paying ransoms, response to an incident, obviously, there's a lot of variables in the severity of a cyber incident that drives how quickly you might recover from that.
Right.
And I think just from experience talking to boards, CIOs, CEOs, ultimately, whether you pay a ransom is not up to the CISO anyway.
Right.
It's a conversation generally you have at the board level with your lawyers, right? Because at the end of the day, paying a ransom, you could be sending millions of dollars to a criminal group that might decide to use that money to, go conduct a terrorist attack, or I mean, there's a lot of downstream, and I mean, and in all seriousness, there's a lot of relationships that if you read some of the reports about where some of this money is going, it's going to organizations that are engaged in kinetic attacks, that are affiliated with
nation states,
states and terrorist organizations. And so this is serious stuff. And I think, when it comes to ransomwares in particular, a lot of organizations just haven't really had the conversation at that level within their organization.
Right.
And, obviously when it comes around and they get the ransom, right, it forces a conversation. But, I think the other thing is, until you know how bad the bleeding is, you're never going to know what your pain tolerance is
absolutely.
Until you decide, what, we are going to pay this.
Because the alternative is going to cost us more.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I thought a year ago now, right, we were faced with the casino outages in Las Vegas, both Caesars and MGM. And you saw one organization, Caesars, that were pretty quick to pay the ransom. And then MGM, really dug their heels in. And so it really does go to show that, I don't think that's necessarily wrong and right answers here. It really, back to your question about business resilience or cyber resilience. One of the points I was going to make is I think, you have to talk about cyber resilience in a bigger stream of thought in terms of business resilience.
Yes.
With cyber being a component of that. And, the components of your business, right? Your processes, how much money you stand to lose every day from different processes failing.
Right.
Every business is a little bit different, and I think it's important to not talk about cyber resilience in a vacuum, and make sure you're discussing it in the broader context.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. It is definitely a board level conversation, and it is all about business resilience, not just limited to cyber. So I want to talk a little bit about cyber asset attack surface management tech, of course, and how the Hubble acquisition has added to the value of the NetSPI portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, I think asset visibility was something that I saw as a significant gap in the market. Lots of point solutions not really providing that holistic view. So that's really where Hubble was focused. And when we first met the team here at NetSPI, it was super clear that we just had very aligned visions in terms of the direction the market is going, in terms of security platforms as a whole, but also at a more macro level when it comes to visibility and how we wanted to go about solving the challenge. Here at NetSPI, we already had a attack surface management product in market that was doing external visibility, and far superior from an external attack surface standpoint than anything we'd built at Hubble. And so the ability to marry those two capabilities together into a cohesive solution to give customers that outside in, inside out visibility across the enterprise was just something that we were extremely excited about the idea of from day one when we started chatting, and now obviously 2 months into the acquisition, we're well on the way to integrate those capabilities. And the experience I've had integrating multiple M&As in the past, both on the buy and sell side of things, I think we've gone into this really eyes wide open, and I think the team's doing an amazing job of bringing the two products together, which we actually already started to do demos of out at Black Hat a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, at the end of all this, the customers win, right? And that's always what I'm looking for. I think that you touched on this, visibility matters. And I think visibility matters today more than ever before, because so much more is happening. You can't mitigate risks that you can't see. I find that many organizations are not at a point where they fully understand the role visibility plays in security operations. And there's some complexity here that can be challenging to manage. So talk with us a little bit. I mean, we've touched on this a little bit. Why is visibility into internal and external attack surfaces difficult?
I think it's just because, or has been difficult in the past, is because there are the information that you need to answer those questions is stored in lots of different places in lots of different formats.
Right.
And so normalizing that information, bringing it together, deduplicating the information, and then applying analytics to stitch together the information so that you understand how things are related to one another, that isn't trivial. And so really the bulk of the IP that we had at Hubble was around the way that we do that stitching, the way that we do the duplication in order to bring together these different corpuses of information to give you a single view of the customer's asset universe.
Right, right. Well, it makes perfect sense. So, Tom, what's ahead for NetSPI? I know, the company's grown a ton over the course of the last couple of years, shifted and focused a little bit, made the Hubble acquisition, and based on conversations that I've had with your team, I think there's some good things in the works. What do you see ahead that you're the most excited about?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I personally am the most excited about taking on the CTO role here at NetSPI and the trajectory we're on is, NetSPI is clearly a leader in security services. That's completely undisputed. We have incredible coverage over the Fortune 500 in terms of traditional pen test services. The ability for us to pivot and start to make that more of a technology-driven strategy,
Right.
and taking it from the kind of traditional pen test where someone gets a PDF at the end of the assessment and maybe it's once a year, to more of an ongoing process, reoccurring pen testing, reoccurring retesting, really to achieve that state of cyber and business resilience delivered through a penetration testing as a service platform, or PTAS as we call it, and more recently starting to integrate that into our broader security platform,
Yeah.
which is where we bring other disciplines together, such as breach and attack simulation, and of course, attack surface management. I think one of the first points I made at the beginning of the conversation was security being a scale and prioritization issue,
Yeah.
and how the inability to understand what's on your environment impacts so many practitioners within the security organization, whether you're talking about vulnerability management, security operations, risk and compliance. Having a platform that all of those groups can access, that are looking at their own information that matters to them, such as what vulnerabilities the NetSPI team found on the recent assessment, but then being able to prioritize that based on asset information. So I've got 1,000 systems that have this vulnerability. I've got 3 people on my team to actually fix it all. Where do I start? How do I allocate resources? Well, the answer is you bring in information from our CASM module and you say, okay, out of these vulnerabilities, which systems are missing endpoint protection? Which of these systems are encrypted? Which of these systems have sensitive information on them? I'm really starting to use real data that I can trust to start making smart decisions.
Yeah.
And not kind of boiling the ocean, but being extremely methodical about the way that I approach my job.
Well, I think that makes good sense. And it just, you can't manage what you can't see. You can't combat what you can't see. You can't be proactive when you don't have visibility. And I think the other part of that I'm thinking about when you're talking about this is that trying to get away from silos and, bringing teams together, being able to access information that they need that's relevant to them, and having that real-time information, that real-time access to data, helping drive decisions, all of that is really kind of business mission critical today.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's this is not a nice to have.
Right.
It's something that, and I think a lot of CISOs are starting to come around to the idea
Yes.
that this is something that really does have to underpin any mature security
Yeah.
program. Um, you know, I've got invested in, whichever EDR provider, like CrowdStrike, SentinelOne. That's a great investment, but how do I know it's on everything it needs to be on? How do I know if people are uninstalling agents? How do I know if an agent, it really, whether you're talking about vulnerability management or the efficiency of your SOC team or how quickly you're responding to regulators, this capability really can help everybody.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Tom, if you could leave our audience with one piece of advice on the, cyber resilience, business resilience front, what would that be?
Yeah, I think, and I'm going to tie it back to the visibility conversation.
Yeah.
But I think the first thing is think about your business, think about your business processes, and then think about what assets support those business processes, because that's really what's going to allow you to drive prioritization and ultimately a much more effective and informed security program.
Yeah. I look at this and I think that, if business resilience is the goal, and it's not just cyber resilience, as we talked about before, business resilience is the goal. And isn't that the goal of every company? I mean, it certainly should be.
Mm-hmm.
It's safe to say that having a proactive approach to security is so critical. Proactive security leads to an improved state of business resilience. It provides a holistic, accurate, real-time understanding of a company's risk profile. And I think that part of the challenge here, and I very much understand, I've had so many conversations with CISOs talking about, how do you sleep at night? And, the game of the cybersecurity business these days is kind of like playing a game of whack-a-mole. What's happening here? Oh my God, something's happening, and it's trying to keep up. And so you've got an attack surface that is more complex than ever before. That's not going to change. It's going to get more complex over time. As we talked about, siloed solutions that can only address part of the problem, not the answer. A complete picture of threat environments, is the underpinning of a proactive security approach. And, I'll end this conversation the same way I started it. Visibility matters now more than ever. Yeah. And, that's a key part of any organization's, not only cyber resilience strategy, but business resilience strategy, I think. So I knew this was going to be a great conversation. Tom Parker, CTO of NetSPI, and it was, you did not disappoint. But thank you so much for making time and joining me and talking about what it is that you and your team are looking at. And I'm thinking that there are good things ahead.
Absolutely, there are. And thank you for inviting me, Shelly.
And that's a wrap for this episode of the Security Square. I'm your host, Shelly Kramer, Principal Analyst here at Kramer&Co. Thanks so much for joining us today. Hit that subscribe button if you've not yet done it, and we'll see you here next time.